What if turning 60 is actually the start of your best life? In a world that often tells us that slowing down is inevitable, what if you could flip the script? Welcome to Reclaim Your Life with Irina. Today I'm joined by the inspiring Allison McCune Davis to explore why your 60s are not an end, but a beautiful new beginning. We dive deep into the power of natural health, shifting your mindset, and finding the purpose in this new chapter. If you are ready to trade fear for excitement and build habits that last, this episode is for you. Get ready to reclaim your life, discover inspiring stories, practical tools, and the path to true happiness. This is Reclaim Your Life with Irina. Let's begin the journey. Give the woman in your life something that truly matters, or better yet, give it to yourself. The gift inside is for every woman who spent decades being everything to everyone else. It's time to remember who you are and rediscover your happiness. This isn't just a book, it's a permission to put yourself first again. Available now, because the best gift you can give is helping someone find themselves. And welcome Allison McCune Davis, joining us from Oklahoma. She's an author, traditional naturopath, and mom of 5 who pursued entrepreneurial business in the world of natural health for the last 14 years while raising her family. With her new book, 60 is a Good Start, a powerful body, a purposeful life, and a plan to make it happen, she advocates for reimagining life after 60 and inspires women to embrace aging as a time of opportunity, vitality, and purpose. Welcome, Allison. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So please share with us, who is Allison outside of your bio?
My goodness, I like to think of myself as an encourager. I find that that's kind of what I've been a lot, certainly through raising children, but also helping women, more recently, like in the last decade, in terms of their health, all kind, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, like the whole ball of wax, and purpose. And so, I just want to encourage women to, right now, to not think that this is the beginning of the end, wherever that sort of midlife point is. For me, it was around 60. That's probably because I started having children later than a lot of people. My first was born when I was 37. And we adopted our last when I was 50. So, that's kind of late. But that's kind of what I would say.
Awesome. What are you passionate about?
I am passionate about that same thing, really. I'm passionate about, my father was a surgeon. And so I grew up in a very medical household, although I kind of believe our country grew up in a medical world, just what I mean by that is not understanding that things like herbs and supplements and diet could heal something in the body, right? We've kind of all grown up to think that we need a pill or something over-the-counter drug or just, something like that. I like to say the body's not deficient in anything synthetic. And so, that my first kind of awakening to that was when I was 30. And I lived in Los Angeles at that time. I was a TV producer. My background was in TV and film production. Studied it in school. And so I was living out in LA at the time, and I had a aggravating issue. And this acquaintance friend of mine that lived in my apartment building, one day she said, "Oh, you have to go to my TCM doctor." And I'm like, "What's a TCM doctor?" She said, "A traditional Chinese medical doctor." And I thought, oh my gosh, what in the world is that? My dad would flip. But I was so aggravated. I said, sure, let's do it. And I couldn't get into him for 6 weeks. So I thought, well, maybe that's a good sign. And he ended up doing all this muscle testing, kinesiology, if you know what that is. And ultimately said, all right, I want you to take these herbs. They were like a bottle of supplements. They were herbs. I don't remember what they were. And I don't want you to have any dairy. You got to get off dairy for probably a year. You may be able to add it back in after your body's healed, but we'll see. And I was able to, actually, but that completely healed my situation. And so that was my first realization that, something natural could heal the body. Maybe those other things were actually getting in the way of healing in some cases. Usually they're for symptoms. But so that started my trajectory into the world of natural health. And then I ultimately, mid-30s, moved back to my home state of Oklahoma, met my husband right prior to that, and we decided to move back together and get married, have children, and all of that. And then in my early 40s, I'd had 3 kids. I had 3 little kids, and I just, my body just was like, having children takes it out of you, number one. But I was still pretty much probably eating the standard American diet, not great, because it was a slow progression of learning about these things. Finally, I went to a naturopath at that point, and all kinds of things were wrong. My gut bacteria was all out of whack. My adrenals were all out of whack. My thyroid was all out of whack. And so we started little by little doing things again naturally to support those areas. I worked on my diet a lot. And, slowly healed and got better. I had no energy at that point, and my driving force motivation was, oh my gosh, I've got to have energy. I can't even be a mom to these 3 little kids, right? Just to do that job. And so that, all of that, those are my favorite conversations at a party. Talk about, health of some sort in a natural way. And then I really became fascinated with the longevity and how people were able to live to 90 or 100 or 110. Like, what in the world? Why? How? What were they doing? Of course, there's lots of studies. The Blue Zone's the big one with all the centenarians around the world. Most people have heard of that one, but there's other ones, big Harvard studies, even within cancer studies there. And so that also became really fascinating to me. And really, what were those lifestyle habits of those people? And so those kind of all together actually became what my book is about, with also a plan to put it all into actions. Those are the things I'm passionate about, besides my family, of course.
Yeah. Must have been such an eye-opener for you. And how did your dad react? Or you kind of kept it quiet?
Well, I did keep it quiet for a little bit, but, it's hard to keep things quiet, and I also wanted his opinions. I really respected him, and I would tell him things, and, it was funny because I remember that was about the time the internet became a thing, and people started doing their own research on things instead of maybe just listening to their doctors, because that's really where you got your information, was from your doctor, before the internet. And so all of that sort of was happening at the same time. He was seeing a new thing with like, he'd have patients come in. He was a surgeon. He'd have patients come in with a stack of papers they'd printed out from the internet. It's just like, oh my gosh, so anyway, yeah, ultimately he died in 2005 of colon cancer. And during those last 2 years of his life, it's inoperable. It was a bad scene. But there was one point where he was just struggling those last couple of years, and he was having some urinary issues, and just combined with the whole thing. And so I brought him some oat straw tea, which is really good for that. Drinking several cups of that a day is just like a diuretic. But it's natural. And so he loved it. And it was kind of our funny little thing that he was so happy and I brought it to him, and he always wanted me to make it a little bit. Your book title is so empowering. 60 is a good start. What inspired you to reframe 60 not as an ending point, but as a fresh beginning? Well, I turned 60. This was 4 years ago. The book was a 3-year process: write, edit, rewrite. But I turned 60, and I kind of freaked out. I was just like, oh my gosh, what? This is 10 years from 70, 20 years from 80. That is crazy. How did that happen? That was just sort of mind-boggling to me. And at the same time, older 3 kids were leaving the house, leaving the nest, still had 2 younger, but they're very independent at this point. So my life had just, from the prior couple of decades, had really changed, like just the time, the energy required to raise. And I also homeschooled for, going on 20 years back then. So, it was really changing, and like a lot of people, so maybe other people's, it happens more at 50, or, when there's just that transition, that midlife transition. And so I was restless at the same time. I was turning 60. I was just restless. I loved what I'd been doing. Kind of my little side hustle was, teaching, just like get out of the house and be with some adult women, right? Teaching about natural health, whether it was online or in person. I love that, and I still love that. But I just needed something to shift. I needed something that different. I didn't know what it was. Wanted to wake up in the morning and just be excited about what I was going to do that day. And that, that kind of just wasn't happening in those recent, maybe year or two or whatever it was. And so I thought, well, I think because I was looking for something that was going to take me into the next 5 to 10 years. Not really something just right now, but something bigger, longer term. And so I thought, I think I'm going to just have to say yes to some things that pop up in my life that maybe aren't the thing I'm looking for, but they're going to lead me to the thing. Sometimes we just know this is going to be a process. And I guess I did. So little by little, I came across a Facebook group and a guy that sold a calendar, and the Facebook group came with it. And I liked the calendar. I'm like, give me a good calendar. I'll love it. It's just a way to organize your life. You're organized to your thoughts in your head. For me, it always has been. That comes from being a TV producer. You have to plan, organize. Same with being a homeschool mom. So those were tendencies I had. But so I get in there, and it turns out this guy is all about having a misogi. So that is the Japanese word for a life-changing event. He wants you to have a misogi every year. Okay, that's cool. I like that. Well, just do something big that's significant that you're going to remember. Oh, in 2021, this was my misogi. In 2022, this is what I did. So I'm in this group, and I don't know anybody in there. It's male, female, all ages. And I'm just sort of reading what people are saying for several months. And finally, this girl pops up and says, I'm going to do 75 hard. I'm going to start tomorrow. Does anyone want to do it with me? Well, have you heard of 75 hard? Okay, so big challenge, big physical, mental toughness challenge, 75 days. And it's hard. And so I had heard of it 3 to 4 months prior. I listened to a podcast of the guy describing it, and he's this big, muscular, tattooed, covered guy. And I was like, no, I can't do this. I'm not your target market. This is too much for me. And I just put it aside. And then she said that, and I was looking for a misogi, and I thought, wow, I wonder. And so I listened to it again, and I thought, I think I can arrange my life. You have to do 2 workouts, one outside for 75 days in a row, eat clean, and a couple other things. And I thought, I think I can do this, and it could be my misogi. And, I just turned 60. I'm looking for something, right? It's only 75 days. There's an end in sight. And so I decided to do it, and I did it. And if you mess up one little thing, you start over. It's very intense in that way. So you really have to plan your days and your weeks and that whole time. So that was big. And then I also did a little mastermind online with some women, all ages, just about kind of what are you doing, just analyzing your life. Like, we do that every now and then. I kind of tended to do that on my decade birthdays. Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I where I should be in my life? But this was the first time I was like, no, something's changing. And then finally it's July 4th, actually, of that year. So it was like 7 months later, I was doing a little breathing exercise, and these things just kind of hit you over the head without notice. But all of a sudden I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to write a book. And my brain was like, no, well, no, you're not. it's all been said before, nobody wants to hear more of it. And I just was like, no, I think I'm going to write a book. Combining the natural health, the longevity, the studies in the longevity, but also the plan to execute on this thing. So the double meaning of the title, 60 is a good start, also refers to 60 days is a good start. Because we know from looking at the nerve cells in the brain that we have to create long-term memory, which is a habit. It takes at least 60 days to do that. And then see the formation of that in the brain. Could take up to 8 months. So 60 is a good start, but we're going to at least do for 60 days. So I took all the lifestyle habits, put them into pillars, and then the idea is you pick something and you baby step your way to these better habits for longevity, which actually is the same thing as a good life, funny enough.
I love it. So it's kind of play on words. It's not 60 as an age, it's 60 days.
It's both.
How many days to think?
I mean, maybe it's 50 for somebody, but it's midlife.
Yeah. I learned, I think, from Rabin Sharma, 66 days to install a habit, 21 days to undo the old one, 21 days to kind of switch, and then cement the last 21 days so you can switch over.
Yes. And throughout those 60 days, you kind of get to those different significant points, where it starts to become a real habit. Really, that happens in the 45-day area. I mean, you still got to keep going, but it's typically at about 3 weeks, people start dropping off. If they've not really committed to it and not really made that decision to keep that promise to themselves. We're so good at promising other people things, but keeping those promises to ourselves, we're not so good at. And I think we reach a threshold in life, most of us, where we're sick of not keeping the promises to ourselves, like in something like that. I mean, the stats on New Year's resolutions is a perfect example of that. People start out January 1st, I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. And then, a few weeks later, it all goes by the wayside.
Totally.
And everybody reaches that threshold at, whatever point they reach it. It just depends. It's all different for everybody.
Yep. Yeah. You've balanced raising 5 children, building a business in natural health, and writing a book. Looking back, what life lessons from those years are helping you thrive in this new chapter of life?
Yeah, balancing all that has been something. Some days you do one thing and some days you do the other. It's very hard, right? And who knows, if you just we're all doing the best we can. Life lessons. I mean, one key thing that has helped me do better in these areas that I want to make habits of mine is a concept called environment triggers behavior. And so setting up the environment to trigger the behavior that I want out of myself. This is what was really big in the blue zones, when they looked at how these people living this long, well, their environments were just naturally set up to trigger their behavior, like they were herding sheep. They're getting outside, they're breathing the natural air, they're walking long distances, so those were key things. The way they had their meals was, it was a social time. It was a several hour long, and the prepping and the hanging out. And these things were just built into their history and how they operated in those places. For instance, in our modern world, like here in America, how do we set up our environment to trigger our behavior? It's just the little things. It's like in the refrigerator, when we open that door, if we see glass bowls at eye level of fruits and vegetables first, well, hopefully that's going to trigger us to reach for that thing versus something that maybe is not so good. Or if we have our tennis shoes sitting out and we see them when we open our eyes in the morning or at whatever time, we want to be triggered. Even with the socks sitting inside them, it's just going to trigger us to go put them on. I like to say, just lace up your shoes. Just do that. You're much closer to walking out the front door and walking down the block and just going for a walk outside. Again, you're getting into nature, just going outside, sunlight, and you're moving your body. These are just key things. I have my supplements in little baggies. I don't have any here right now, but they sit in this real pretty glass bowl. Right when I walk in my office, I see them, and I can grab one, and they're just right there versus in a cabinet. It took me years to figure that out. Like, they're not getting taken when they're sitting in a cabinet. Just how do we make it easier on ourselves to do the things that we want to do, that we know we want to do, whatever those things are?
Totally, you're so right. Kind of like environment affects, and what we see most in our view, where we spend the most time. That
Yeah,
kind
they
of
say
influence.
there's I think it's 10 million sensory receptors in our body, and 9 million of them are related to sight. What we see, that's why we post little Post-it notes to remind us, do this, wherever, I've done that a lot on my bathroom mirror, on my computer, or whatever. So yeah, environment triggers behavior. We should think about that a lot.
Totally, totally. Many women fear aging because of cultural messages about slowing down or losing relevance. How do you help women shift from fear to excitement about what's possible after 60?
Well, one thing to know is that fear and excitement, or anxiety and excitement, those are actually the same physical sensations in the body. So we can just sort of go, okay, I'm afraid, but I'm going to change that. We can sort of make that conscious choice to feel a certain way. But also, I just want to say, my gosh, and I list a ton of these in the book. There are so many people that have found their main purpose in life in the last third of their life. It's a myth that it's too late. And I remember my girlfriend from age 6, we're still friends. And so I went to visit her. She lives in another state. This was a couple of weeks before I decided to write the book. I had turned 60. She had just turned 60. We went out to have a drink with some of her friends who had also they were all about 60. And so of course, we're talking about this fact. And she laughingly said, I hear 60 is the gateway to old age. And I was like, no, I don't accept that. Just I had a vehement response to that. And it's just, that is the big myth. It's not too late. In fact, it's an amazing time because we probably have a little more brain space right now. Let's say 85% of women have children. Okay, so that's the majority of women. So there's a point where they've left the nest. Well, hopefully they've left the nest. Maybe for whatever reason, there's some still there, but they're independent. They're adults. Or like in my case, I still have 2 teenagers that are close to leaving the house, but they're very independent. So what's required of me is not what it was for those several decades that were exhausting. I mean, the greatest thing I've ever done, but the most exhausting thing, just mentally. It starts out physical, then it's mental. Or maybe it's just a woman who's had a big career, or both, and a lot of your audience, both. They've worked and raised kids. My goodness, like, it doesn't get more exhausting than that. And so, but we're now at this point where we have a little more white space in our brain, more time to think, more time to take care of ourselves. Maybe we just didn't do any of that self-care in those decades prior. And so, in addition, we have a lifetime of wisdom we've accumulated, right? We're a lot smarter now than we were back then. So what an incredible time to do some things that we feel called to do. Now, I address the physical and the mental too. So we need to be doing okay in those areas, because we're not going to want to pursue a purpose we feel called to if we aren't feeling physically well with the energy to do that thing, right? So we have to have a focus on that too. So it's kind of doing a little bit of all of this at the same time.
Totally, you're so right. I believe age is just a number. I feel like I'm 17, then I look at my kids like they are my kids.
Right.
But we get to define, how we want to feel by implementing the habits that you're sharing in your book. And in general. Your background as a traditional naturopath gives you a unique perspective. What are some simple natural practices women over 40 or 60 can adapt to boost their energy, vitality, and confidence?
I have so the 3 pillars in the book are, I call them body work, brain work, and world work. So body work's the physical, brain work, the mental, emotional, spiritual, and then world work is our purpose and our relationships. So those are the 3 areas we want to kind of get right. And under each are the big 5, the how. How are we going to get these right? So the key in the physical would be eat. What kind of diet are you eating? And so maybe a person would decide, in fact, on my last 60-day dare, I have a online group for this too. I was going to eat, and I still am doing it now which I'm excited that I'm still doing it because, we finished a 60-day dare. But I am eating 30 grams of protein first in the day before I eat anything else. And I always kind of had a hard time eating enough protein. So that was a big one for me. So maybe you're going to add something to your diet. Could be even supplements too. Or maybe you're going to take something away from your diet, alcohol, sugar, or whatever. Or just eat a certain way, intermittent fasting, or, keto, or just whatever you want to do. But you could choose something in that category. Drink. Are you drinking enough water? Do you have your water bottle with you? We need at least half our weight in ounces of water. They say, there's over 50% of the ER visits are solved by hydration. People just don't drink enough water. And if we're drinking coffee, which I drink my coffee, I love my coffee in the morning, but we need to kind of double up on the water if we're doing that, because that can have a tendency to dehydrate us a little bit. How are we moving our body? If you haven't done anything, then maybe you're going to choose to just, walk for 20 minutes or walk to the end of the block if it's just completely new thing. Whatever, just you're going to do something for 60 days is the idea. Sleep, are you sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night? That is the number one healing tool. That is when we heal. Like if you were trying to heal something and you didn't do anything else but get the right amount of sleep, that's number one. And then breathe, deep breathing sessions. That's people like breathing. Yes, that's a big deal. We don't breathe right in this country. I learned that a long time ago when I was teaching yoga. But yeah, that's something to work on too. So, any of those could be just get out and move your body. Make sure you're drinking enough water. I mean, just like those 2, if you wanted to just put 2 huge things that could make a difference, getting enough water in your day, and you got to set it up. And environment triggers behavior. I have two water bottles that I always have filled up, and one's with me and the other one's like sitting in my entryway, just so I can grab it. I even get a few plastic water bottles, so in case they're empty and I'm running out the door, I've still got something to grab. So, you're setting up your environment to trigger that behavior. And then also moving, just move the body in some way.
I love those examples. I believe in them as well.
Yes.
And the movement is such a easy and simple thing. Anytime we feel in a bad mood, we can move our body and instantly change how we are feeling, and it could be a solution for that. And not only that, it health benefits, but mental health helps.
Absolutely, that's all of this goes to that. I mean, they say the opposite of depression is action. So it's not be happy, it's action. So if you're depressed or just feeling down, just stand up and move the body. Even better, walk outside, walk down the block, just walk around the backyard. I mean, just get up and move your body. That's going to be an initial great start.
What is your one non-negotiable for you on your day-to-day?
Slow mornings, which encompasses a lot of things.
Totally.
But I probably started this about, I don't know how, 4 years ago, maybe when I started writing the book, maybe probably around then. I don't book any appointments till afternoon or, around the 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock time. And I take care of things I need to take care of. I just, do the things I need to do, which it's a variety of things, but, yeah, slow mornings. That's non-negotiable. And I also have found, which I think is important to figure out, when are you at your best, like your mental best? Everybody's different, and for me, I am mentally at my best from about 11 a.m. to about 3 p.m. Those 4 hours, that's when I'm firing on all cylinders, but so I have to have a long ramp up period.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. If a woman listening right now feels stuck, uncertain, or uninspired about her future, what's the first step you'd encourage her to take to start reimagining her life?
I would think about there's a line, we are the 5 people we hang out with. So we're influenced by the 5 people we hang out with, whether they're literally in our presence physically, or even if we're listening to them like on a podcast or, daily, who are our big influences, and are they good? Are they uplifting? Are they helping you move forward? Do they make you feel better about yourself? I would really assess that. And because it's huge. I mean, that's why I thought I could go from, and this was the only thing I've really looked back at, that I could go from not thinking I could do that 75 hard challenge to 4 months later thinking I could do it. The only thing that changed was I was reading those people talking in that Facebook group, who I didn't know any of them, but they were all just looking for the things they were going to do that were exciting. They were really living life. Oh, I'm going to do this for my Musogi. There were hundreds of people in there. And so that's the only thing that I had a mindset change. I was influenced by listening to those people. I don't think we realize we can think, oh, I can watch that thing and not be influenced, or I can listen to that person and not be influenced. I don't know about that. I think we are all influenced by each other in a way. So I would really assess that, and I would probably pray too. I mean, I do that. I believe in it, and I think, there's a spiritual component to all of this. And so that's the first things I would do.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. What is your superpower if you had to pick one?
I think I'm pretty good at saying no. And I feel like that's kind of what I'm trying to help other women learn to do. Every time we say yes, we're saying no to something else. So what are we saying no to? If we're adding something to our life, we got to take something away from our life. And especially at this point in our life, one of the exercises that there's a section of the book in the world work section. So if you don't know what your purpose is right now, if you're restless, like I was restless, there's 60 questions, and you can journal your answer to one each day for the 60 days. And I think that'll lead you to what your purpose might be right now. One of the exercises in there is a core value exercise. And I want you to take like 200 words, they're core value words, and I want you to narrow them down. Going through it several times, to 5. Companies do this all the time, but individuals don't really do this. What are your core values? And then when you figure that out, and they're yours, they're not what you think society says they should be. They're just, what are they? What is in your heart? What are your core values? Narrow those down. And then, I feel like at this point in my life, time is our only resource. And it's short. We're only here for the blink of an eye. And so I really want to only do things all through my day, my week, my month, that fall into those core values. And if this thing, maybe someone's asking me to do something, but if that's not fitting in there into what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing in the world, I need to say no. Because probably, and I know this to be true, I've seen it many, many times, I can say no to something, and the person that is meant to do that thing will pop up. It just always happens, because there is somebody meant for whatever that thing is. So I think you got to get really clear on your purpose, and what you are doing here, what you feel called to do here.
You're so right. And that's one of the reasons in the blue zones, because in Japan, at least, they have this concept of ikigai.
Yes.
Even when you supposedly retire, you still keep on living because you have something to look forward to, some kind of purpose that you're fulfilling. So I love that you
Yes.
bring that. What are your core values?
Freedom, truth. My name, Allison, actually means truth, or truth seeker, or whatever. Beauty. One of the brain work categories is create. So this is like spend 30 minutes a day creating something. And this is kind of for the purpose of de-stressing. So I love needlepoint. I've just been into it for like 4 years now, but it just it's just creating these just gorgeous sort of heirloom pieces. I've framed some. And so beauty, intuition, and encourager. So those are mine.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love them. I think creativity is an important one to have. That what makes our experience beautiful. It's also allows us to use the parts of the brains that sometimes they're dormant and cause them to be activated and to
And
make
everybody
life.
can do that. Like there's so many, I mean, adult coloring books. I have friends that love the adult coloring books, and they color some pretty things, but it's just that process of, they say that 45 minutes of art making, and I give a ton of examples of things you could try, it lowers cortisol. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, totally. I recommend people to do 10 minutes of joy every day. Do something that sets your soul on fire.
Yes.
Whether it's moving, singing, painting, dancing,
Yes.
whatever.
I love it.
good.
Yes. Very good.
If there is a woman listening right now who wants to reclaim her life but doesn't know where to begin, what would you tell her?
Tell her to read my book. Sorry for the self-promotion, but it's really what I wrote about. I mean, it really is. It's taking these keys, and they're all the keys to a good life. They happen to be the keys to longevity in the physical, the mental, emotional, spiritual, and the world, your purpose and relationships. And it's just little by little picking something I like to pick something from each of the 3 categories to do for 60 days. I think you'll be uplifted. We have to think about, what do we want to be a year from now or 5 years from now? And so what are we going to do to get to that place? And the other line I really love is, our future is hidden in our daily routine. And I was notorious for not doing this. I guess I really started on this path almost about 10 years ago, when I finally decided to exercise. I was 55. I was going to exercise regularly, no matter what. Like everything else was going to wrap around my exercise times. Feeding the family, do whatever, whoever needed this, that, or the other from me, when you're the hub of the family, it's just that way. But it was going to have to revolve around my periods of exercise, because there was always something that got in the way. Oh, I got to go do this instead. So, and so before that, I would like not exercise or not for a year. And then I would be like, oh my gosh, I've got to go exercise. And then I'd do something for 2 weeks, and then I'd stop. And then, it was just this back and forth. And, but if we want our future to look like, I remember looking at this woman in particular when I was about that age, and she was such a great example of, she was an entrepreneur, but she was very fit. She and her husband would travel to hotels in another city for whatever reason, like a conference. And the first thing they would do is search out the gym and go to a gym. I was like, wow, that is the last thing I would do at that point. So I was like, I want to be a fit person. So I have that energy level to do what I want to do, my purpose, or, whatever it is. So I think really, and so hopefully this book is an answer to that, starting to little by little just incorporate these habits, so you do become that thing that you visualize a year from now.
Totally. I love that. Thank you so much. You're so right. If people would like to connect, to learn more about you, where can they get your book as well?
Well, everywhere books are sold, so Amazon and all the rest. My website's my full name, AllisonMcCuneDavis.com/links will take you to a few links that one will lead you to our online community if you want to join us for our next 60-day dare. Or there's some podcasts. There is a free download on there that you can get of my favorite supplements and practices to keep my immune system boosted. So there's several things. There's links to where you can get the book too.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you. We'll include everything in episode notes. And I love your message that, it's never too late to
Never
change.
too late.
Doesn't matter what the number says, the age.
That's right. That's right.
So thank you.
Thank you for having me.